Hi everyone. So in this video we'll be looking at the playwright tests and we'll be using the programming language JavaScript, automation test tool as playwright, IDE that is integrated development environment as Microsoft Visual Studio and Node.js as our framework. Now what I have done is I have created step-by-step approach where we'll be looking at the step number 1, which is installation of Node in the local machine. Then we will be verifying whether the node is really installed in our machine or not. That is step number 2. Step number 3 is installation of Microsoft Visual Studio Code in the machine. Now, Microsoft Visual Studio Code is one of the most widely used integrated development environment in the organizations as well as in the world. And step number 4 will be installation of Playwright in a newly created project or a folder. We'll be looking at that particular step. Step number 5 will be create JavaScript test steps and assertions using Playwright. Step number 6 will be launching of the browser of the application under test and modify the test scripts according to the testing criteria. So we have a live application which is Ace Online Shoe Portal. We'll be looking at one particular scenario which we want to conduct as a test automation test scripts. So we'll be modifying our test scripts according to the testing criteria, performing the assertions using the Playwright scripts. So guys, what I've done is I have gone into ChatGPT and entered a simple statement, and that particular statement is how has web or test automation changed? And interestingly, what really happened was that ChatGPT had given me around 1 to 7 answers. Out of that, top 2 is interestingly shown on my screen. That is, point number 1 is shift towards single page applications. Many modern web applications are built using single page applications, which rely heavily on client side JavaScript to do dynamically update the page. This has led to the development of new automation tools and frameworks that can handle the complexity of testing single page applications such as Cypress and Test Cafe. So, interestingly, Selenium is not featured in this answer by ChatGPT. Now, don't get me wrong, Selenium is the most widely used automation test tool in the world, and that doesn't mean that we are totally ignoring Selenium. But this is an answer which is interestingly shown by ChatGPT recently, and what it shows is the modern web applications is built on client-side JavaScript, which is used to dynamically update the page and it's pretty fast. So there are new applications which has come to handle these kind of complexities, and Cypress and Test Cafe is featured in the top first answer. And the second point is increased adoption of headless testing. Now the headless testing is becoming more popular as it provides faster and more efficient way to run the tests. Headless testing involves running the test in a browser that runs in the background without a user interface. This can be done using the Puppeteer, Playwright, and WebDriver IO. Now, interestingly, point number 2 also doesn't feature Selenium. So, this is probably going to get a trend in the future wherein the faster modern web applications are going to come. And these tools will be probably come in the front runner for automation test framework selection. And another interesting factor which I did in the background was what I did is I used Google Trends. Now, if you know what the Google Trends is, certain factors can be compared with each other. Now, what I did is I compared the Selenium test as well as Cypress test and the Playwright test. So, by this comparison, what I really did is how many users all over the world are searching for this particular terminologies. And you will be interested to know that this trend is from 2nd of August 2020. The trend has been using of Cypress as well as Playwright automation test tool slowly steadily. Now the red curve line is of Cypress test and the yellow one is of the Playwright test. And slowly steadily as we move towards 2023, you can see that the gap between the tools like Selenium as well as Cypress and Puppeteer is reducing. as we trend towards right side. So this shows some kind of trend that is happening in the technology space or the web automation space, which is happening all over the world. But don't get me wrong, Selenium is still the most widely used automation tool. Playwright and Cypress is slowly, gradually catching up to bring in more faster results as well as handle these kind of complexities in the client side JavaScript frameworks as such. Now, apart from that, if you do one thing, if you go to Google browser and just search as Playwright Test, you'll be able to see there are a lot of links as well as there are a lot of trends that keeps on getting updated in Google as such. There are a lot of news that comes with the modern web based applications as well as JavaScript based applications. What Playwright is really doing, how does different IDs support Playwright and Cypress, what is Playwright, definition, users, benefits. So everyone is trying to see the benefit this automation tool, which is slowly steadily coming in the market and taking its space as well. All right, now let's proceed with our step-based approach. And before that, what I will request you, if you really like these kind of videos, kindly subscribe to the channel Ace Automation, and you will be able to gather more information related to trending tools like this, which will be touching base on each of our videos. All right, now before proceeding to setup of Playwright into our ID, what I wanted to touch base is show what are the benefits of Selenium and what are the benefits of Playwright. Now, there are two groups, two different testing community groups, which are fans of Selenium, and there is another group which is fans of Playwright as such. Now, I don't want to be a distinction between a Selenium and a Playwright as such, but certain ways or certain team members are most of the time asked by the delivery heads or the delivery leads within the organization that would you go for Selenium as an automation test tool or would you go for Playwright as an automation test tool? Now, to be honest with you, there are benefits of Selenium and there are benefits of Playwright, and each tool has its own pros and cons, its own advantages and disadvantages. And this particular slide tries to capture what is the real benefits of Selenium as an automation tool and what are the real benefits of Playwright as an automation tool. So let's look at it one by one. Now, benefits of Selenium is it helps in the parallel text execution, and that's a Selenium grid concept. You can understand that there is a Selenium hub as well as Selenium nodes with which you can automate around 300 400 test cases, whatever number of test cases that you have in your organization or in your test suite. You can run it parallelly in all at one go, and that saves a lot of time. So that is a very good benefit of a Selenium as such. And apart from that, there is a cross browser support. Okay, so Selenium, it supports different browsers as such, and different browsers as in the ones which are very popular right now in the market, which is Microsoft Edge. It supports Firefox, it supports Safari, it supports um, Google Chrome as well. It supports almost all browsers right now in the market. Okay, so what that's another benefit. Multi-language support. So Selenium supports multi-language support, as in what it means is there are different programming languages. There is Java, there is C Sharp, there is JavaScript, there is Python. So Selenium supports all of them, and which is good part of Selenium, because sometimes what happens is the organization go for a specific tech stack. When I say tech stack is there are different tech stacks in the organizations. There could be a Java tech stack, so the architecture or the developers in the organization, they might be looking for specifically a particular tech stack. So they want team members to write in a particular programming language. This is where Selenium comes into picture. Now, Playwright doesn't do that because Playwright supports JavaScript, and probably that's the advantage of Playwright, but kind of a disadvantage as well if we are looking for a particular programming language or a tech stack in a company. Okay, so apart from that, Selenium supports headless as well as headed mode. Okay, so that's also a good advantage of Selenium as such. Now let's look at a high level what are the benefits of Playwright. Okay. Now, Playwright supports auto weighting. So what it means is we don't have to exclusively put weights Playwright tests. And what it means is the less coding and less weighting, less flakiness, which is a very big advantage of Playwright. And that saves a lot of time and it gives a faster results, as well as there is no specific requirement of flakiness. Okay, so what happens is if you try to put hard weights, generally in case of Selenium, there is a tendency that if it's not, the web element itself is not visible, then it might fail in case of Selenium. But that's not the case with the Playwright, specifically in the web applications, and which have dynamic pages as such. So that's auto handled in case of Playwright. The second benefit of Playwright is cross-browser support, which we already seen in Selenium. So that is also an advantage in Playwright. So Playwright supports Firefox as well as Google Chrome. It supports Safari as well, which is most of the browsers in the market. What Playwright has an advantage is inbuilt screenshots and screen recording, which we will be seeing as well in our subsequent section. And we'll be looking at how we can capture the inbuilt screenshots and screen recording. So we don't have to exclusively mention, okay, this is what I want to capture as a screen recording. It gets automatically captured with a configuration file or through a command line itself, which is pretty good, as in you don't have to specifically configure for this. You will be able to see what really happens through the Playwright test. And apart from this, Playwright has supports headless as well as headed mode, which we have already seen in Selenium. So both kind of supports headless as well as headed mode, which is kind of advantage for both the testing tools as such. Now, if you have noticed during the during this whole process of understanding about benefits of Selenium as well as benefits of Playwright testing tool, I have specifically marked star on some points. Now, those are the strengths of this testing tools. Now, I have not particularly put star only on Selenium. I have put stars on Playwright as well. So, Selenium's best strengths are it supports parallel test execution, which is kind of a grid system within Selenium concept or technology as such, and it supports multiple language support in case of Selenium. Now, in case of Playwright, the star benefits are is the auto weighting as well as inbuilt screenshot and screen recording. Now, those who have really coded in Selenium and Playwright, they will be really able to understand what's the pain to set up weights in case of Selenium. That pain really doesn't happen Playwright. It happens auto handling of the weights, which is a very big advantage in cases of Playwright. All right, so this is what I wanted to cover before we proceed and jump into writing the Playwright scripts or Playwright automation scripts, so that we understand, okay, there are certain advantages and strengths of a particular test automation tool, as well as there are strengths of the another automation tool as well. And slowly and gradually, when we proceed in our technology as well, as the time goes, maybe the benefits might get inclined towards a particular automation tool and we might see a winner in that race. But let's stick to both the advantages of both testing tool having its own advantages, and we bring and take out the strengths of those testing tool in our tech stack or test automation frameworks as such. All right, let's proceed next. All right, let's now proceed with step number one, which is installation of Node in the machine. Now, before verifying whether you really require to install Node in your machine or not, what we have to do is in your machine, look for command prompt. So I'll just type here as command prompt, and this particular window will get opened up. Once the command prompt opens up, what you can do is you can just type a command over here, which is node hyphen hyphen version, and press enter on your keyboard. If you do not have node in your machine, which will be most probably in your case, you will not be able to see something like this, which is version 18 point something or any other version. Now, if you are not able to see any other versions over here, that means you do not have node in your machine. Okay, so that's the reason you will have to install node.js in your machine. So how do we do that? Is we can go to Google Chrome and just type over here as node.js download. You will be able to see this particular link, which is download node.js. You can just click on the link, and based on your operating system that you have, you can install the node.js in your machine. So I'll just click on Windows. The moment I do that, you can see that the download has happened. So you'll be able to see that there is a node.js .exe file that which has got downloaded. So if you double click on your downloadable file, you will be able to see something like this, and you'll be able to go ahead with your installation of Node.js. So you can just click on next and then accept the terms, click on next, and it will give you a default path in your machine. You can click on next, and you can select these appropriate ones and click on next. Now, once you do that, you will get a successful message that the node has been installed in your machine. Now, with the node, what really happens is you also get a node package manager, which is also called as npm. Okay, now once this particular message comes for you, because I have already installed node, I will not proceed, but I will request you to proceed with this particular step of clicking next and getting a message of node.js is really installed in your machine successfully. All right, now once that is done, what you can do is you can go to command prompt again and then type over here as node hyphen hyphen version, and this time around you can see that the version 18 or whatever version you have downloaded, the latest one, you'll be able to see that number coming over here. Apart from that, you will be able to check whether there is npm in your machine. Now what you can do for that is you can type npm and then you can put hyphen version and then press enter on your keyboard, and you will get a version for you as soon as you have installed node in your machine. All right, so these are the two important steps that we have to really do, and as part of this, what we have done is step number one we have done, as well as step number two, that is verify node is installed in your machine, is also done. Now what we will do is step number three, which is installation of the Microsoft Visual Studio in the machine. Now for this, what we can do is we can go to Google and just type here as Microsoft Visual Studio code and press enter on your keyboard. And the moment you do that, you can see this particular link over here, which is downloads. Otherwise, you can just click on this particular main link and you will be able to see that there is a downloadable link over here. You can just click on downloads and proceed with your installation. Okay, now this is a community version, it's not a paid version, which is good enough. And once you have successfully installed Microsoft Visual Studio, the moment you come into your machine, you'll be able to search here as Visual Studio, and you'll be able to see something like this Visual Studio code appearing here. And once you click on this, you'll be able to see that your ID is opening something like this, and which means that your successful installation of the Microsoft Visual Studio has happened. All right, now this is our step number three. Kindly perform these three steps and we will move on to the next step, which is installation of Playwright in a newly created project. All right, so for step number four, what we have to do is we have to create a particular folder wherein we have to install Playwright. And for that, what we can do is in the Visual Studio, there are different options over here: new file, open folder, clone from Git repository. Now we are trying to create a new folder locally. So I can request you to click on this open folder and then directly go to C drive, and over here under users folder you can create a folder. So I will create a folder over here. I'll just right click and click on new and create a folder, and over here you can just name it as Puppeteer Test for your convenience, and then click on this particular folder. Okay, now this folder is empty. I'll just select folder, and this folder is empty. As you can see on the left widget, there is no code over here. So we will come to this particular terminal and we will just enter our command, which is npm I playwright, and then press enter on our keyboard. And the moment we press enter on our keyboard, you can see that there is a download happening. So there is a folder that created over here, which is node underscore modules, and the playwright is also getting downloaded simultaneously. So playwright, once it has installed, you can see that this particular folder gets created, and if I decollapse this one, you can see that there is a playwright as well as playwright core, and then there is a packaged hyphen log.json and package.json files. All right, now once the playwright has got installed, now the next step is that we want to create a sample test. Okay, now we will come to our application under test. Before that, we will just run a sample test. For that, what we will be doing is in the Puppeteer test, which we will create a folder under Puppeteer test, which we will be naming as tests, and then press enter on our keyboard. Under that test, we will create a file which is ace shoe portal dot spec dot js, and press enter on our machine on our keyboard. Now, as soon as we do that, you can see that this particular file gets created, which is a JavaScript file. Okay. Now let's look at our application under test. Our application under test is Ace Online Shoe Portal, and this is a very simple application. It's a live application, and once you are able to go on this particular URL, you will be able to see there are some web elements. Now there is a hamburger menu. There is some left widget which are links on this particular portal, and you can click on sign in portal as such, which will land you to on this page, which is a sign in page, and there are test boxes over here, which is username and password, and there are a couple of buttons which is for login as well as new user. Now you can click on new user button, which leads you to the user registration page. Now once you are on the user registration page, you can enter the details related to the registration, and then once you enter all the details and clicks on submit, you will be leading to the page of registration successful page as such. So this is our small validation. Now looking at this particular application, because it's a web application, now the important thing is we have to launch this application as such. Okay, so we have to make the Puppeteer launch this application. That's the first one of the important steps that we have to do in the Puppeteer, for which let's create the method for this one. Okay, so I'll just take this particular link, and then we will use that link to launch our browser. Before that, what I'll do is I'll declare couple of constants, and over here I'll just add a couple of constants, which is test expect equal to require, and this is going to be at the rate playwright fun test. Then I'll just save it, and I'll just add a particular test method, which is test, and I'll just name this method as verify new registration is online shoe portal. All right, now what I will do is I'll make this particular method as async, and for that I'll just define here as async, and then I'll just open up brackets, and then open up page over here, and I'll just add a statement over here, which is await page dot go to and this is where I'll put my application understat URL. Okay, so what it means is we have put a very simple statement where we are opening up the browser, await page.goto and the URL as such. Okay, so this is a very simple test. Now what I'll do is I'll come to this particular terminal and I'll just run here as npx playwright test and press enter on my keyboard. So as soon as I press enter on my keyboard, you can see that the test has passed, and what it has done is it has just run this particular test, which is test method, which is just opening up the browser. Now as soon as I run my test, you can see that there is another folder that got created, which is test hyphen results. Okay, now we can store the test results over here just to verify that everything looks good over here. But as at this point of time, this point of time, we will just leave it like that. All right. Now, what I'll do is I will just add a playwright config file. Okay. Now that is required for some configurations that will be for reporting purposes. So what I'll do is I'll just click on this particular folder and just add this file, which is as such we can use a defined config. So I'll just paste it over here, which is straightforward. I'll just show that as well. You can quickly have a look. And there is a constant define config devices playwright test, and the details are related to test configuration. Okay, module exports. Now I have just entered over here to get a report, a kind of a report, so that once I run this particular test, I'll be able to see some kind of mechanism of what tests I'm really performing. And as you can see over here, there is a Chromium, Firefox, and a WebKit. Okay, now Chromium is a Google Chrome, which is a desktop Chrome version. Firefox is a desktop Firefox, and WebKit is a desktop Safari. So we will be testing in all three browsers our test. That's the importance of this playwright config file. Now, as part of it, I'll go back to Ace online shoe ace shoe portal.spec.js, and over here I will add a particular import statement, and this import statement will be define config from config playwright test as such. Okay, now this is defined. The playwright config file is also designed. I saved this file. Now what is important for us is to understand what test we are doing. Okay, now there are different ways to capture the element locators in playwright, and what we'll be doing is we will be capturing the elements and we will be putting into wait for selector, which is pretty easy. Now in Selenium we have to put a lot of weights, but in playwright we don't have to put any weights. Okay, now for that what we'll be doing is we'll be just putting, once the Ace online shoe portal gets opened up or launched, the browser as such, we will be clicking on the hamburger menu. Okay, so for that I'll just add a statement as await page dot wait for selector, and we'll be providing the selector. Now there is an easy way to check the selector or CSS selector in our application. So what I'll do is I'll go to the application, and this is the web element that we want to click. Okay, so that our sign in portal opens up. Now for that what we can do is, on since I'm the Google Chrome browser, I'll just click on these three dots and then more tools and then developer tools. Once this opens up, I'll just click on the inspector and I'll just click on this web element as such. Okay, now I'll just right click and then go to copy on this particular element, go to copy and then select the copy selector. Now once I have selected the copy selector, what I can do is I can come back to the script and then enter over here as the selector over here. So it's pretty quick. As you can see that we have copied the selector and we have come to the script and then enter the wait for selector. All right, now we are just waiting for the selector. Now the next particular statement has to be await page dot click, and where we have to exactly click is on this particular selector. Okay, now I'll just copy this selector, which is the selector which we had copied from the application as well, and just enter over here as this particular selector so that it can be clicked. Okay, now as soon as we clicked on the hamburger menu, we can go back to the application, and then we are looking for this sign in portal. Okay, now sign in portal is this particular element in the dev tools. I'll just right click, copy, and then go to copy selector and come back here and then enter over here that we are waiting for this particular selector to appear. Okay, so as you can see, there is no hard waits over here. What we are doing is we are just entering the details of the selector. Okay, so until the selector is not visible, the script will not proceed to the next step. So that's the beauty of JavaScript as well as the async calls that we have. Okay, so it's not a synchronous calls, it's all async calls, due to which we are able to put a dynamic wait, and we are not hard coding anywhere in our scripts. It's getting automatically calculated based on the waiting for the element. Okay, so thus we will enter all these details on similar to this, and I'll just add page dot click. So we waited for this sign in portal link, and then we'll be clicking on this particular link, and then once we have clicked on the sign in portal, that is this particular link, we'll be landing on this particular page. Now there are a couple of buttons over here. Now you new user register is the one which we are looking for. I just clicked on here and I'll just come to this particular element. I'll just go to copy and copy selector. Once I've copied the selector, I'll just come here in my script and then page wait for selector. Once I've entered that, I'll just enter the element over here and then end my statement. Now I need to click as well. So page dot click. I will enter the details of the next details, which are these particular details, so that all the text fields are present. Now, for example, if I don't enter all these text fields, what will happen is the moment you click on submit, these errors will come. So if I enter first name, then it will give an error for the last name. So it's important for the customer to enter or the user to enter all these details. Now I'll capture the elements one by one, and then I'll come back to this particular playwright scripts, and then we'll try to run this. All right, so what I've done is I have entered all the details. Now, yeah, as you can see, the locator specifically. So now this particular locator, right? The reason I have put locator over here is because this is a text field. Now the text field has to be a locator in case of JavaScript page.locator, and I have entered the selector over here, which is first name. So if I go here back to my application, if I right click on this and inspect it, I just copy the element and come to copy selector, come back to my application. You can see that the selector which we copied from there is first name. That is the ID itself. Okay. Now similarly, I have captured all the elements and entered over here. And at the end, I'm just clicking on the submit button. So this is the whole test that I am supposed to run as per my validations in the application as such. All right. Now I'm done with this. I'll just save this file and come to the terminal. Now I can click on terminal as such. I can click on new terminal, and over here I'll just run the command as npx and then playwright test. Okay, I'll just press enter on my keyboard, and you can see that it is running the test itself. So it's running one test using one worker, and the test has passed as such. Okay, now one good thing about playwright testing is you can really view how the tests are really happening. For that, what you can do is you can enter another command, which is npx playwright test hyphen hyphen ui. Okay, now this is a different command line to run playwright test, even if you really want to see what's happening on the ui. So I'll just press enter over here, and the moment I press enter, what really happens is there is another browser which opens up, and this browser will be looking something similar to this. And over here you can see that there is something called as action, before, after, metadata, actions all appearing, and the test is waiting. Okay, so it's waiting for the user to click, and I'll just click on this particular button, and it's running. The test is running as such, and you can see that it has given successful message. Okay, now I can individually run this test, and the moment I do that, you can see the whole code, as well as you can see the screenshots happening, and you can just navigate through this particular click that has happened, which is a very good view. Okay, so this is what Playwright has done, and you will be able to see what buttons have been clicked, what elements have been entered, and the moment I scroll down as a user, you can see all the details that is getting entered over here, which is very cool. Okay, so this is a kind of a real time, plus it kind of gives us an view like what all details have been entered, what all actions have been performed, what all assertions have been performed, what all expects have been performed during this whole course of the playwright test. So which is very helpful to the testers or automation testers to get this kind of view. So I'll just, to close this, what you can do is you can just come back to this terminal and just do Control C, and it will give you a prompt to whether you need to terminate this or not. I'll just press enter, and it will get terminated. So this is also very good command line to perform this particular test of Playwright, which is npx playwright test hyphen hyphen ui. All right. Now, another command that we can really use is npx playwright test hyphen hyphen reporter hyphen junit, and press enter on your keyboard. There is another command that we can enter is npx playwright test hyphen hyphen reporter equal to html, and you can press enter on your keyboard. And the moment you do that, you can see that again the test is running, and after that you will be able to see that to open last html report, run npx playwright show report. Okay, now over here there is a folder which is playwright hyphen report, and over the here is the index html. You can click this, or you can just write the command as specified over here, which is npx playwright show hyphen report. Okay, and then if I press enter, you will get this particular HTML file, which is coming as verify user registration. Now, this is a very detailed file, as you can see, and we had to configure very less. Looking at this particular test, what all tests we are doing, we wrote very less code over here, which is only 18 lines of code. In fact, 19 lines of code, and as you can see, the report which is getting generated is quite exhaustive, and it shows even milliseconds of time. So it has taken around 2.3 seconds of time just to perform the test, and the validations that we are performing for this whole web application, going into different tabs as well as different validations that we are performing, is huge. So at that instance, you can imagine that with playwright test, we are doing maximum test as well as we are doing the minimum effort as such. So that's the beauty of playwright as such. Okay, cool. So that's what we wanted to do. We performed step number 4, which is installation of Puppeteer in a newly created project. We looked at creating JavaScript test steps and assertions using Puppeteer test, and then we looked to launch the browser of the application under test and modify the test scripts according to the testing criteria. So that also we did. And we looked at the reporting style as well. We are able to create HTML reports. We are able to see a very exhaustive report as well, which shows all the timings, what all validations being performed, all that things we are able to see through Playwright reporting as such. All right. Now that we have understood how to create the playwright scripts, and if you notice, the total time that had been taken for the test to run was lesser than 3 seconds or 4 seconds. That was very fast. And in case of Selenium, ideally it takes more than that. And for that, what you can do is watch out some of my other tutorials or other videos which uses Selenium as an automation test tool, which you can find at the end of this video. And for the students who really want to look at the script which is shared in this particular video, what I can request them is that I have pushed this code into my GitHub channel. You can go and have a look at the GitHub channel as well, and have a look that how this particular script has been created as such, which we have looked here, have created this from scratch. And hopefully this helps you, and kindly share, like or subscribe this channel so that you can get more details, something related to test automation tools or development tools as such, which will help you to get the notification as and when these are getting published. Happy automation testing. Thank you.